She posted it on a Wednesday. Not a Friday night. Not after a few drinks. Not even buried in a story that would vanish in 24 hours. No. Megan posted it like it was a Christmas card. Like it belonged in a frame. Public. Permanent. Proud. My phone buzzed while I was halfway through my morning walk. A thermos of burnt black coffee in one hand. Half listening to a podcast about concrete decay. I pulled my phone out. Thought maybe it was Jim confirming Saturday's tea time. Nope. There she was. Megan. My wife of 27 years. Pressed against some guy I'd only seen once. At her company's quarterly thing last winter. He was holding her waist with both hands like she was his property. Her head tilted back. Laughing at something not funny. I remember that laugh. She used to aim it at me when I sketched by the fireplace. The caption read, "Some men don't ask. They just hold you." Took me a second to realize she tagged our mutual friends. Not just her coworkers or her yoga group. Mutual. Married couples we vacationed with. Neighbors who'd been to our backyard every 4th of July. People who knew me. And yet, not one of them had the decency to message me privately. Just a little thumbs up emoji. One of them even commented, "Girl, you look happy." I didn't throw the phone. I didn't even sigh. I just stood still and let the coffee go cold in my hand. Then I saved the post. Saved the photo. Saved the caption. Because that caption wasn't a moment of passion. It was a declaration of war. Years ago, 5 to be exact, I built a folder. On a flash drive, password protected, stored in a small locked drawer in my office. The label on the folder read, G-Plan. It wasn't named after me. Not exactly. G stood for groundwork. For goodbye. For Grant. If she ever crosses the line, this is how you leave without setting the house on fire. She thought I was incapable of finality. That my silence was submission. But she didn't know I was an architect even in endings. That I don't raise my voice. I remove foundations. Quietly, I walked back home. No music, no more news. Just the crunch of gravel under my shoes and a new kind of oxygen in my lungs. Not freedom. Not yet. But clarity. I had warned her once, 6 months ago, after finding a wine-stained hotel keycard in her coat pocket. She said it was, from a client dinner, that I was being paranoid, and that you work too much to understand intimacy anymore. That night I stood in the garage for an hour, staring at the blueprint rack. I didn't confront her. I just stared at the idea of space, of structure, of beginning again. And now here we were. The folder wasn't dramatic. It was measured. Every item was a single domino: bank account clauses, property title transfers, exit asset divisions under the old prenup, which she never read, by the way. And yes, even a document that made her continued public embarrassment a direct breach of spousal dignity, enforceable under conduct clauses in our joint estate agreement. Because back then, I was smart enough to marry a woman I loved, but cautious enough to write a contract for the one I might one day no longer recognize. I powered on my desktop, entered the password. Rafter 27. Our wedding venue and the number of years I stayed when I probably shouldn't have. The folder opened like a vault. Every piece was ready, polished, waiting. A system built not for revenge but for exit. Before I called the attorney, I took a moment to sit in the leather chair she always hated. Said it smelled like old books and ego. It did. That's why I liked it. The room was still. Not heavy. Just still. And look, if you're the kind of man who finds the story landing a little too close to home, I'll say this. More than 97% of you listen to stories like this and never subscribe. But this one's just getting started. And every time someone hits that button, it tells the team behind this that stories like mine are worth hearing, worth telling. So, if you're here, don't just listen. Subscribe. Trust me, what's coming is better than therapy. Anyway, I made the call. He answered on the second ring. I need to trigger the amendments, I said, without preamble. He didn't ask which ones. Just said, understood, because a good architect knows. You don't knock walls down with emotion. You remove them one silent stud at a time. I didn't go into the office that day. I didn't need to. The plan was never built for speed, it was built for silence. Execution, not escalation. I took the old binder from the safe in the basement. One I labeled, Structural Contingencies, because it sounded like something boring, like insurance paperwork. Inside were signed forms with blank dates, pre-notarized by a discreet clerk in Phoenix who owed me a favor from a design gig 10 years back. Everything about what I was doing had been rehearsed, down to the timestamp on the call log. I dialed Maurice Hammond, My estate attorney. The man Megan used to call Mr. Vulture. She hated how calm he was. How clinical. She once told me after a dinner party, "If I die first, do not let that man near my urn." Now, I hoped he engraved her name into a granite clause. He picked up like I was calling about lunch. "Grant. It's time," I said. "Trigger the amendments. All of them." Silence. Then a single word. "Confirmed." Within 2 hours, the digital pen scratched its way through the life she thought she had partial claim to. First, her power of attorney revoked. She'd never used it, but now she couldn't. Next, access to all shared accounts frozen. Not drained, just locked. Just enough to cause confusion when her debit card got declined at some boutique brunch spot. And the real estate? The house she posted filtered photos of from every angle. Fireplace selfies, poolside drinks. Working from home shots that made it look like she was a CEO instead of an executive assistant? Gone. Transferred, cleanly and legally, into a prenuptial clause trust one had buried in paperwork from our 2nd year of marriage. She'd skimmed it back then. Something about asset protection if business dissolves. Never questioned why my name was listed as sole long-term beneficiary. The house now legally belonged to a trust controlled solely by me and my LLC GH Designs. The same LLC that had no employees, no overhead, and no purpose except to legally exist for this very moment. She had no clue. A second call went out. Not to a lawyer, but to the county title office. They owed me a courtesy. After all, I renovated 3 municipal buildings on time and under budget. "Need a quick update on a title," I told the clerk. "Residential, Danbury Drive. Remove secondary name per trust refile." "Got it, Mr. Hampton." Click. Just like that, the name Megan vanished from the documents she never cared to read. The silence was almost satisfying. I stood in the kitchen afterward, pouring myself a drink. Not scotch, not something dramatic. Just a lemon seltzer. Cold. Uncomplicated. I watched the carbonation rise and imagined Megan somewhere downtown, scrolling through vacation rentals, thinking she was still ahead of me. This wasn't revenge. It was subtraction. She'd always assumed I was too methodical to make bold moves. That I'd delay, dither, file for therapy sessions before I ever filed for anything else. She never noticed that the books I kept in the den weren't just old architecture tomes. They were legal references, case studies, quiet blueprints for personal sovereignty. You see, Megan thought marriage was a stage and I was the lighting guy, always in the background, making her look better. She never realized I was the one holding the blueprints the whole time. And now the walls were shifting. No fights, no shouting, just silent pivots. A slow unbuilding of us. The home she curated for Instagram likes, no longer hers. The bank account she linked to her favorite boutique app, temporarily unavailable. The power she assumed she'd always have in this marriage, revoked like a guest pass after hours. It's easy to think control means confrontation. But control, real control, it's filing paperwork 3 weeks before the other person realizes there's a problem. It's playing chess while they post selfies from checkers tables. Megan was still smiling in that photo, still smug, still sure that I'd do what I always did. Swallow the humiliation and move on like a well-trained Labrador. She had no idea. The leash was already off. She came down the stairs in a black dress I'd never seen before, tight in the places she used to dress modestly. Hair done up like she was auditioning for someone else's attention. I didn't comment, didn't ask. I already knew where she was going, and more importantly, who she was hoping would notice. "Going out with a few people from the firm," she said casually, like it was just another work event, as if her stilettos screamed casual. I gave her a polite nod. "Enjoy." She paused at the coat rack, adjusted her lipstick in the mirror like I wasn't even in the room. Then, with a smirk, "Don't wait up." I didn't. By the time she was halfway through her charade of a dinner, I was already parked in front of a nondescript 6-story building in the West End, 2 blocks from the waterfront. No name on the exterior, no buzzers, just a metal keypad and a curved wall of glass that reflected my headlights like a spotlight on the next chapter. The man who greeted me at the door wasn't just a realtor, he was a former client. I designed a boutique wine bar for him 6 years ago, helped him through a zoning nightmare, and quietly waived my final invoice when his dad died mid-project. He remembered, and tonight that memory turned into leverage. He opened the door with a grin. "I've got something not on the market. Furnished. Paperwork clean. The seller's daughter moved to Berlin and left it turnkey. You'll want to see the view. The view, to be honest, didn't matter. The privacy did. We rode the elevator in silence. The carpet was thick. The air smelled like cedar and money. At the top, he opened the door and stepped aside. The condo wasn't flashy, just well-built. Concrete beams, walnut panels, a desk I could imagine drafting new plans on, a chair she'd never sit in. I walked the space slowly, touching nothing. Then I turned to him. "What's the seller's number?" He pulled a card from his pocket. "I can handle the closing. Immediate possession if you wire by Monday." I didn't blink. "Monday it is." We shook hands like men who understood that sometimes a property isn't a home. It's an exit. I didn't sleep there that night. I went home, let myself in quietly, and saw that Megan's car still wasn't back. I didn't check her location. Didn't need to. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even curious. I just walked past our bed, still made, into the garage, and pulled the box marked office extras from the top shelf. Inside were things that didn't belong in our shared life. The signed copy of the condo LLC formation, the burner phone from an old real estate trip, an untouched bottle of Highland single malt I'd been saving, not for celebration but confirmation. I poured one glass, sat on the bench, and smiled. Megan thought I was sulking at home, thought I'd stew, scroll, maybe drink too much and rehearse a confrontation I'd never have the nerve to finish. She had no idea I was already gone. Not in the dramatic sense. Not storming out or finding myself. No, that's the stuff of movies. This was different. This was the slow, deliberate unfastening of a life she thought she owned. And here's the part she'd really hate. I wasn't even doing it out of anger. I was doing it out of design. I'd spent my whole career solving impossible spaces, restructuring foundations no one believed could hold weight. This was just another blueprint. While she clinked glasses with her coworker and played the misunderstood free spirit, I was 3 steps ahead, pen in hand, drawing the exit she swore I'd never take. The thing about architects is we don't yell, we don't rush, we don't guess, we measure. And I was done measuring her worth. It went up on a Sunday morning. While I was deep in the condo's final paperwork, sitting on the floor with the file open across my lap, sipping coffee that still tasted like the old house I was shedding. My phone buzzed once, then again. Not messages from friends. I didn't have many of those anymore. Not since Megan curated our social life like a museum tour. Perfectly lit, always rehearsed, and absolutely fake. No, this was an alert from my paralegal, Taylor. She never sent emojis, never small talk, just links, evidence. The Instagram post was short. A new photo, Megan's hand draped over Ryan's chest. Same bar, different outfit. He had that same smug tilt to his head like he'd just won something valuable at a pawn shop. Her caption read, "You only live once, winking face." Fire emojis erupted in the comments. Fire, 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 power couple energy. OMG. Is that the guy you told us about? Didn't you say your husband was fine with this? And then her reply, the one that sealed it. "Oh yeah, he's totally chill. Grant's old school. I think he gets it. Oh, I got it." Taylor's message followed 2 minutes later, adding this to the file. Conduct Clause 14b, now fully applicable. Timeline confirmed. She didn't need to explain. Clause 14b, in our marriage trust stated that any public act of humiliation, infidelity, or reputational sabotage enacted while still legally married could forfeit the claimant's access to joint residual assets. It wasn't emotional. It was real estate math. Megan had just posted her own liability. Voluntarily. The folder we called marital conduct wasn't something I ever expected to use. Back when Maurice drafted it, we'd done it quietly. Like putting airbags in a car you pray never crashes. But here we were. Collision. On full display. No brakes. I looked at the image again, not with rage but with detachment. Her hand on his chest. Her smile dialed just right for the algorithm. She didn't look drunk. She didn't look ashamed. She looked deliberate. That was her mistake. You see, Megan didn't just post a photo. She posted intent. Framed it like a motivational quote. She weaponized the illusion that I was passive old school, as she said, when in reality, I was simply disciplined. What she took as chill, I designed as quiet immunity. She thought the marriage was already dead. I knew it wasn't. Not on paper. And that meant everything she broadcasted with Ryan's cologne still on her skin, legally counted. Even her friend Holly commented, "Wow, you really out here living like you single face with tears of joy." Taylor grabbed the screenshot. Dated. Timestamped. Geotagged. Our strategy didn't require confrontation. It required documentation. You'd be amazed how much digital footprints weigh in court. Especially when they're paired with timestamps, conduct clauses, and prior warnings, verbal and otherwise. The internet never forgets, and now neither would the judge. What Megan saw as flirtation, the estate saw as forfeiture. Later that night, I heard her come home. Keys jingling too loud, footsteps a little too rehearsed. She tossed her heels near the door and headed straight for the fridge. I stayed upstairs. Lights off. Quiet. She called up, "Hey, do we still have that bottle of Pinot from Napa?" Like we were still us. Like her hand wasn't just wrapped around another man in 4K. I waited 5 seconds, then replied, "Should be behind the leftover dignity." She laughed. Didn't get it. Or maybe she did and chose to ignore it. Either way, she poured her wine and sat in the same chair she used to pretend was uncomfortable, unless guests were over. She scrolled her phone, no doubt rereading the comments, feeding herself another dopamine loop while the trap quietly closed around her ankles. She didn't know that every tap, every emoji, every digital flirt had turned into Exhibit A. And me? I didn't raise my voice. I raised the folder. The valet recognized me instantly, called me Mr. Hampton, like nothing had changed. Like I hadn't just erased a last name off half my life. I handed him the keys, nodded, and walked toward the double doors of the Eastway Country Club. The place Megan once called our second living room. It wasn't the kind of place that took walk-ins or forgave bad etiquette. You dressed for dinner. You arrived early. You tipped discreetly and smiled just enough to be liked but never remembered. Megan loved that. It made her feel curated, polished, important. She had a way of leaning into the leather booths like she owned the building, ordering wines she couldn't pronounce unless she was 2 glasses in. She'd toast the waiter for remembering her order like he hadn't written it down 3 times. Tonight, I wore the navy blazer she once begged me to throw out. Said it made me look too old money, not sexy old. That's exactly why I wore it. They seated me at our usual table, corner booth, overlooking the golf course we never actually played on. "Will someone be joining you this evening, Mr. Hampton?" the hostess asked, glancing at the second menu she was about to place. I shook my head. "Dinner for 1. Just me." She paused, then removed the extra setting without comment. I ordered Megan's favorite wine, a Chablis she never could spell, only remember by label color. The sommelier didn't flinch. He'd brought it to our table countless times. He poured 1 glass. I left the second untouched. It just sat there, sweating quietly on the linen like a ghost. I didn't rush. I took my time sipping, watching the sun begin its slow collapse behind the trees. I remembered the first time we dined here. Megan had worn a red dress and pretended she didn't know the waiter was watching her walk to the restroom. I laughed back then, thought it was harmless, a little flirtation. Now I saw it for what it was, rehearsal. Halfway through the bottle, I excused myself and walked to the admin office. Not the front desk, not the concierge, the back hallway, where memberships are managed and profiles updated quietly without spectacle. Ms. Wilcox was behind the counter, silver bun, tight smile. She'd been here longer than most of the members. "Mr. Hampton," she said, politely surprised. "How can I help?" I handed her a document from my breast pocket. "I'd like to update the account profile. Remove Megan Hampton from all joint privileges. Effective immediately. And no, she's no longer authorized to host events under my name." She blinked. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Are you certain? That's a major change. Would you like to wait until—" I smiled. Not wide, just enough to shut the door gently. "I'm positive." She nodded, typed something, then turned the monitor to show me the confirmation screen. Where there had once been 2 names, Grant and Megan Hampton, there was now just 1. "Anything else I can help you with?" she asked, voice softer now. "Yes," I said, folding the paper. "Next month's autumn soiree. I'll be attending with a guest. Make sure the reservation reflects that." She hesitated for only a second. "Of course." As I left the office, I passed by the event board, the same one Megan used to hover in front of, picking which fundraisers or wine tastings would make her feel like royalty for a few hours. I ran my finger across the October calendar, stopping on a Thursday she'd probably had circled in her mind. Then I walked back to the table, finished my glass, left the second one right where it was, untouched, half full, and absolutely unnecessary. I didn't look back when I left. "You see that country club?" It used to be her stage, her audience, her proof she married up. Now it was mine, quietly, entirely, and she wasn't just off the guest list. She didn't even know the show had started without her. She found the envelope on the kitchen counter, tucked neatly between the grocery circular and a coupon flyer from that overpriced organic pet store she never actually bought anything from. Large, cream-colored, stamped confidential legal notice in bold serif. She didn't even open it. I know this because I left a faint crease across the seal before placing it there, enough to mark if it had been tampered with. 3 days later, it was still untouched, a monument to her own arrogance. She texted me that afternoon while I was at the DMV. Don't forget to pick up oat milk. No mention of the letter. No acknowledgement of the previous week's cold silences or the dead weight between our steps. Just oat milk. Like we were still pretending. I didn't reply. I was too busy finalizing the title transfer for what used to be our secondary car. A bland old Volvo Megan used for grocery runs and spa days, the one she parked like it was beneath her. Gone. Sold quietly for cash and replaced. Same plate number, new VIN. The new car? A Bentley. Not flashy. No chrome. No red leather. Quiet slate gray, polished to a mirror. Bulletproof windows. More for metaphor than safety. It wasn't about flexing. It was about erasure. Rewriting the driveway the way I was rewriting my life. Quietly, completely. The title was registered under GH Properties LLC, my shell company, for miscellaneous architecture assets. Technically true. But that Bentley wasn't just an asset. It was a message written in tire tread and silence. Megan didn't notice. She was too busy scrolling travel sites on her iPad. Her legs tucked under a throw blanket she used to reserve for movie nights. I caught a glimpse of the screen one evening as I passed the den. Photos of a spa retreat in Sedona. 2-person packages. Sunrise yoga. Private mineral pool. And right there in her notes app, ask Ryan if he can get Friday off. You'd think a woman in her position might have developed a hint of wariness. A pause. Some animal instinct that whispers, something's off. But no. She was fully anesthetized by her own ego. While she giggled into her phone about essential oils and luxury robes, I was finalizing insurance on the Bentley. Commercial use. High-limit policy. Parking registered at the new condo address. No forwarding notice sent. Just a name quietly removed from an old system and inserted into a new one. Like a transplant with no scar. That envelope on the counter? It contained documentation she would one day scream over. Divorce proceedings. Asset transfer confirmations. Conduct clause enforcements. But at the time, it was just paper in her periphery. She thought the war hadn't started. I was already collecting the trophies. She came into the garage 2 days later, in workout leggings and a top that tried a little too hard. Looked at the Bentley like it had materialized from another life. "Whose is that?" she asked, frowning. "Company vehicle," I said, not looking up. She blinked. "Since when do you need a company vehicle?" "Since the company needed distance." She laughed. "What does that even mean?" "It means don't park behind it." She shrugged, mumbled something about midlife crisis, and backed out to meet Ryan at a juice bar. You'd be amazed how bold people get when they think they're winning. When they believe the fire is behind them instead of beneath their feet. She had no idea that every missed detail was a thread unraveling the entire stitch of her life. The untouched envelope. The changed title. The new address she hadn't even seen. The car she couldn't touch. Megan thought she was dancing on a marriage she'd already buried. She didn't realize I was still alive beneath it, digging my way out, one signature at a time. She was still midair when the Instagram story went up. Her lips puckered, miming a kiss at the camera. Ryan asleep beside her, neck tilted like a marionette left too long in the sun. The caption read, "Weekend reboot sweat droplets dizzy, now back to reality lol." Reality. That word doesn't get enough credit for its timing. While she played domestic escape with a man who quoted TED Talks during dinner, she was also busy filling her DMs with jokes aimed at what she thought was my unraveling. To her Pilates group chat. Maybe Grant finally moved out. Would save me the hassle. To Holly, her friend with the most plastic surgery and least loyalty. Can you imagine if he changed the locks while I was gone? Face with tears of joy, face with tears of joy. And to her sister. I swear he's been extra quiet lately. Probably crying into that dusty leather chair. I'll bring him back some overpriced herbal tea. She landed at 9:12 p.m. Took her sweet time at baggage claim. grabbed a green juice from the airport cafe. Same one she used to complain was bougie for no reason. By 10:04 p.m., she was on the road, playing whatever pop psychology podcast Ryan had gotten her hooked on about emotional agility. Something about moving on without guilt. When she pulled into the street, the first thing she noticed wasn't the missing Volvo. It was the silhouette of something expensive, something that didn't belong. A low-slung, slate-gray Bentley sat parked in the driveway like it had always lived there. The house lights were off. The porch light dimmed to its motion-sensitive flicker. She slowed, blinked, looked around like maybe she'd turned down the wrong street, then checked the number on the mailbox. Hers. She pulled halfway into the drive and stopped. Just sat there, hands frozen on the wheel. The Volvo, the one she always left at the far end of the drive, under the big oak tree, was gone. She assumed I'd taken it on some sad little road trip. She hadn't imagined I'd traded up. She got out, heels clicking on the concrete, suitcase wobbling on its wheels behind her. The Bentley gleamed under the dim porch light. Dark windows, clean as glass. She peered inside. Nothing personal. No trash. No air freshener swinging from the mirror. Just immaculate design. Impenetrable. She pulled out her phone, aimed it at the car. Maybe to send to a friend, maybe to document it, maybe to play it off like some luxury mix-up. But her fingers hesitated. That's when the porch light went fully bright. Motion detected. She stepped up to the door, still half laughing to herself. Pulled out her key. Inserted it. Turned. Nothing. She jiggled it again. Still nothing. No click. No movement. She bent down, tried the bottom lock. Then the top. Then stepped back. Her smile dropped. Suddenly, it wasn't a mix-up. It was intentional. She pulled out her phone, tried to call me. Straight to voicemail. She knocked once. Twice. Waited. Nothing. From inside, I watched her through the new security camera feed. Quietly sipping from the same glass of water I poured an hour before she landed. Her suitcase looked absurd in her hand. Like someone trying to check into a hotel that had no record of her existence. She knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. She paced. Tried the side door. Still locked. Tried the garage keypad. Code changed. She was pacing now. Arms crossed. Phone back in hand. Thumbs typing furiously. Probably texting Holly, her sister, maybe even Ryan. She paused again and looked back at the Bentley. Finally saw it for what it was. Not a gift. Not a guest. A monument. Permanent. The space where her car used to sit had been claimed. Officially. Legally. Unapologetically. And that was the moment it hit her. Not like a scream. Not like a slap. But like gravity. Slow. Heavy. Final. This wasn't the beginning of a fight. It was the end of her role. The locks weren't jammed. The car wasn't misplaced. The silence wasn't an oversight. Everything she'd laughed off for months. The warnings, the documents, the empty responses had converged into this moment. One locked door. One luxury car. One spot no longer hers. And I didn't come to the door. Because when a structure collapses, the architect doesn't return to argue with the rubble. The knocking turned frantic around the third round. Not angry yet, just panicked enough to reveal that Megan still hadn't decided which version of herself she wanted to play. The jilted wife? The confused victim? Or the woman who forgot her keys after a hot yoga retreat? Her indecision rang through every slap of her palm against the wood. So I opened the door. No drama. No performance. Just a quiet click and a clean swing. She froze. I didn't look like someone who'd been crying into takeout containers or begging friends to take me back in. I looked fine. Better than fine. Pressed charcoal button down. Sleeves rolled once. Steady posture. Calm eyes. But it wasn't me that broke her. It was the woman standing behind me. Mid-60s. White blouse. Pearl earrings. Posture like she used to sit on boards that mattered. She wasn't young. That's what confused Megan most. The threat she expected was blonde, gym-built, and 10 years her junior. But this woman wasn't playing a role. She was established. Composed. The kind of woman who never raises her voice because she never has to. She stood with one hand on the archway. Smiling like this was just another Tuesday showing a penthouse. Megan blinked, voice cracking. Who is she? I didn't hesitate. My realtor. And now my partner. The words didn't just land. They split the floor beneath her. You could see her running the math behind her eyes. Partner as in romantic? Partner in business? Partner in the property that now had locks she didn't own? Her gaze darted past me, searching for signs of life inside. The pillows she picked, the framed prints from that overhyped art show, the candle tray she ordered from that influencer's link. All still there, but something was different. The staging was colder, cleaner, replaced, like a museum exhibit of a life she used to live. She took a step forward, tried to move past me like muscle memory would carry her inside. I didn't block her. I didn't have to. I held up the envelope instead. Manila, thick, weighted. Her forward motion stalled like she'd hit a glass wall. "What's that?" she asked, voice clipped. "Everything," I said. She didn't take it, so I opened it for her. One by one. Dissolution paperwork, already filed. Notices of legal service, timestamped. Receipts. The Bentley, the condo, the title change on both vehicles. Screenshots. Her hand on Ryan's chest. Her caption. Her replies. A notarized summary of marital conduct violations, with references to our prenup clauses. Bank statements showing the transfer of joint funds into protected trusts. I didn't speak. I didn't explain. I just let her read. Let the silence press down like the weight of her own decisions collapsing on top of her. She reached for the edge of the doorframe. Missed it. Had to take a step back. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. I met her eyes. "You started it. I just finished it better." Her face went from shock to anger, then desperation. But nothing came out. Her mouth moved like she was about to form a sentence, but the words stuck behind her teeth like they no longer trusted her. Behind me, the woman stepped forward gently, laying a hand on my shoulder. Not possessive, not dramatic, just enough to say, "I'm here, and I'm part of this now." Megan's voice cracked again. "You replaced me?" "No," I said flat. "I outgrew you, and that was the truth." There was no version of her I wanted anymore. No past to salvage. No point in yelling. I didn't need her to understand. I needed her to leave. She looked down at the papers again, hands trembling. "I never thought you'd actually." "Yeah," I cut in. "That's the part that always gets them." She turned to go, staggering like she wasn't sure whether to scream, cry, or vanish into the driveway and hope it swallowed her whole. I didn't close the door behind her. I let the wind do it. She was on the phone before noon, probably before brushing her teeth. I imagine she didn't sleep. Too busy pacing her sister's guest room, replaying every quiet moment of the past 3 months that suddenly wasn't so quiet. Every canceled dinner. Every, "I'll handle it," she thought was laziness. Every night I said nothing while she dressed for someone else. Now silence was her enemy. The first call was to Holly. Always Holly. The one who cheered her on with every emoji. Every cocktail-fueled whisper about how Grant just doesn't see you anymore. The one who called me the walking beige. Megan figured Holly would help spin it. Paint me as manipulative, controlling, cold. Tell her this wasn't her fault. But Holly didn't answer. So Megan texted. Then tried calling again. Still nothing. 2 hours later, Holly replied with one sentence. "You laughed too soon." No emoji. No lol. Just that. Like a mirror shattering. Megan tried Nora next. From yoga. The one who once drunkenly said she envied Megan's life. Her chic marriage, with a mature man who wasn't constantly chasing protein powder. Megan had used her for validation on the regular. Nora answered. Barely. "Megan," she said, voice tight. "I'm actually walking into a meeting. Can we talk later?" "Wait, you saw the photos, right?" Megan asked, pushing fast. "You know Grant's trying to make me look like some kind of—" Nora cut her off. "He didn't make you look like anything. You did that all by yourself." Click. Call ended. That's when the panic really set in. You could hear it even from afar, through the walls of a woman unraveling. She opened group chats, scrolled back, saw her own words now stripped of context, looking less like witty sass and more like someone building their own guillotine. "Grant's so passive. He probably wouldn't notice if I moved out with half the furniture. Why do I even feel guilty? He doesn't care anymore. Ryan gets me in ways Grant never could, emotionally and, well, winking face stuff." Now those same friends had seen the documents, the dissolution filing, the clause citations, the screenshots with timestamps. She hadn't just hurt me, she'd humiliated herself with Wi-Fi. By the time she tried texting her hairdresser, yes, her hairdresser, even she had switched tones. "Hey babe, sorry, can't get involved. It's messy. And honestly, Grant was always a gentleman to me. That one stung. Megan used to joke she could burn down our house and still get her blowout done for free. By evening, the wall was closing in. All the friends she used to weaponize in whispers and smirks, gone. Not because they loved me, but because they saw the difference. I didn't raise my voice. I raised the standard. Her last hope was her sister, and even she was hesitant. I didn't realize it was this bad, Meg," she muttered. "You told me he was cold. But you didn't say you posted things like that." Megan exploded. "Are you seriously taking his side now?" "No," her sister replied. "I'm just not sure there is a side anymore. There's just truth. And consequences." That night, Megan sat alone in the parking lot of a chain cafe she once mocked me for liking. Claimed it was for men who gave up on flavor. She scrolled through old photos. Ones where we smiled. Ones she used to crop tighter, so no one could see the space already forming between us. Now that space had a name. A lock. A deed. It wasn't just that she lost me. She lost the room. And for a woman like Megan, whose greatest addiction was being seen, that kind of vanishing was worse than rage. It was silence. Amplified. The third time she came back, she wasn't alone. Her brother was with her, Jake. Loud, confrontational, the kind of guy who still believed real men fix things by yelling at someone. I watched them through the new camera system as they climbed out of his pickup truck. Megan pacing like she was charging herself up for battle, and Jake storming like someone owed him rent. They didn't knock. They didn't call. They marched straight up the drive, past the sidewalk line, eyes locked on the house like it was something stolen. Megan wore black sunglasses too big for her face, like a disguise. Jake had a folder under his arm, probably filled with printouts from Reddit threads and blog posts about unlawful evictions. He gestured like he was already mid-argument, as if this was going to be some righteous courtroom drama and not the quiet execution of legal precision. What neither of them noticed until they were too close was the sign, mounted just above the gate keypad. Stainless steel. Engraved. Private property. Owner, G. Hampton Design Trust. Trespassing enforced. Simple. Final. They stopped. Jake's mouth opened first. "What the hell is this?" Megan didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on the name G. Hampton. She'd seen it before. On the trust documents she'd never read. On the LLC paperwork she'd once brushed aside when I told her I was future-proofing our assets. Now, that name didn't just float on a PDF. It lived. Here. In stone. Steel. Ink. The gate didn't open for her, because it didn't recognize her. And standing just inside the drive, behind the iron bars, was the security guard. Calm. Hired 3 weeks ago. Trained. Licensed. Polite. "Ma'am," he said, stepping forward. "You're not authorized to enter. This is private property." Jake puffed up. "She lives here. She's his wife." The guard checked his tablet, flipped through a few screens, then looked up again. "Not according to the deed." Jake turned to Megan, frustrated. "You told me he was bluffing, that all that legal crap was just scare tactics." Megan didn't respond. Her eyes were locked now. Not on the sign, not on the gate, but on the Bentley parked in the exact spot she used to call hers. It gleamed like it knew. Inside the house, behind the tinted windows and soundproof glass, I stood at the hallway edge watching the feed. No satisfaction, no smile, just stillness. Because this wasn't about victory. It was about boundaries. They stayed there another 30 seconds, Jake gesturing wildly, Megan frozen. Then he gave up, spat toward the grass and stormed back to the truck, muttering something about lawyers and overreach. Megan didn't follow immediately. She took one last look at the house. The door she used to walk through without knocking. The lawn she posed on every autumn, pumpkin in hand. The window where she once waved to me in mock apology after forgetting her keys. And now, a gate, a sign, car she couldn't touch, a name she couldn't override. She reached into her bag, pulled out her phone, stared at it, probably scrolling through old messages, photos, trying to find a crack. She found none. I had removed her like dry rot, quietly, completely, and with no ceremony. She stood there, whispering something under her breath. The camera didn't catch the words, but I didn't need to hear them. I could see it in her shoulders, in the way her hand curled around the metal fence like a child staring into a museum they used to own. And then her lips moved. Just 2 words, 2 syllables. "He wasn't." She turned, walked back to the truck, got in. No shouting, no threats, Just silence. And as they drove away, her head turned once toward the house. Then not again. She didn't knock after that. She didn't call. She didn't post. Because it was done. She used to laugh in the mirror and call herself irreplaceable. Now she parks on the street.